Be lifted high, be lifted high.
Hey everybody, Midweek Refuel. Tonight we're going to finish chapter 16 of the book of Acts. And if you remember from the last time, we were talking about Paul and Silas preaching the gospel together. They had just come from Lydia's home, and they were basically being confronted by Jewish leaders who had called in the Roman authorities to basically say that Paul and Silas were inciting a riot. And so they wanted them to be stopped, and we're going to pick that up in chapter 16, verse 23. Let me share my screen with you all, and we will get right to that. After they were severely beaten, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them securely. Let me pause right there for a second. One of the things that stands out to me, um, even from the last time we were together, is a lot of times as believers, we think if we're doing the will of God, then everything is going to work out. You know, the Lord will come in and save us from dangerous situations, and we have this expectation that we won't go through certain challenges or difficulties because we have the Lord with us, and I know that feels comforting. Um, in the long run, of course, God is with us through all of these things, but it doesn't mean that we don't go through difficulties. We don't go through challenges. We don't go through suffering. And I know for me, that was really important to understand. I haven't necessarily enjoyed that process of learning this lesson, but I know that being exposed to sort of kingdom culture, believing that we are living in the kingdom today, and that the kingdom has come, the Holy Spirit dwells in us, there is a tendency to believe that nothing bad or no suffering will happen because we always have a solution. And I think that that only focuses us on the natural, on what is happening to us in the natural. And we live from heaven to earth. It's thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And sometimes I think just subtly we reverse that. We want it to happen on the earth before we connect with heaven. And I think sometimes that suffering, that pain, that struggle that we go through has the effect of building the kingdom within us. And I know we don't like to hear that because we don't want to go through that. And I'm with you. I don't either. I've been through enough pain in my life. I don't want any more. But I do think it's important. Here Paul and Silas are preaching the gospel, and they're just met with resistance to the point where they're being beaten and thrown in jail. And you would think, well, maybe they shouldn't have done that because, this is the end result. But, sometimes when you do those things, and we live in a world that doesn't value the kingdom, then we face resistance. And obviously, Paul and Silas were not afraid to face that resistance. And those things hopefully will help us to grow our faith. So just wanted to start with that. Verse 24. So the jailer placed them in the innermost cell of the prison and had their feet bound and chained. Most likely it's kind of like solitary confinement. They were in a place where it would have been really hard for them to get out because they would have to go through so much to be released. Paul and Silas, undaunted, prayed in the middle of the night and sang songs of praise to God while other prisoners listened to their worship. So there we see the attitude of Paul and Silas. Adversity did not cool their attitude. It did not cause them to rethink their approach. They just continued to do what they were created to do, which was to praise and worship. And everyone else was hearing, their expression of worship to God. Verse 28, here's where God comes in. Suddenly, a great earthquake shook the foundations of the prison, and all at once every prison door flung open, and the chains of all the prisoners came loose. That sounds supernatural. Startled, the jailer awoke and saw every cell door standing open. Assuming that all the prisoners had escaped, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself. So, fair or unfair, the jailer was responsible for these prisoners, and if he let them escape, then it was his life that was going to be the price. And so he was about to do that. He was about to end his life. And then Paul shouted in the darkness, "Stop, don't hurt yourself. We're all still here." The jailer called for a light. When he saw that they were all still in their cells, he rushed in and fell trembling at their feet. Then he led Paul and Silas outside and asked, "What must I do to be saved?" So here, this situation had enough of a profound effect that he was ready to give his life to the Lord. And here's how they answered. Verse 31: "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your family." Isn't it interesting? Paul didn't lead him in a prayer. He didn't, give him the four spiritual laws or, walk him through the Romans road. I understand none of that was written at the time, but I'm a little bit being facetious, only to say, here is what we are to do as believers. Get this? Believe. Believing in the Lord is what saves us. And that is true every day of our lives. It's not just, I believe one day and it's good for the rest of my life. No, I have to choose to believe every day, even when it's difficult, even when I don't have the feelings that go along with that belief. My choice to believe in him is how I am continually saved each and every day. Verse 32: "Then they prophesied the word of the Lord over him and all of his family. Even though the hour was late, he washed their wounds. Then he and all his family were baptized. He took Paul and Silas into his home and set them at his table and fed them. The jailer and all his family were filled with joy in their newfound faith in God. At daybreak, the magistrates sent to the officers to the prison with orders to tell the jailer, 'Let those two men go.' The jailer informed Paul and Silas, 'The magistrates have sent orders to release you, so you're free to go now.'" So you would think, answer to prayer, there was a decree from higher up that Paul and Silas were to be let go. But Paul wasn't finished here. Paul had some justice that he wanted to see come about. And here's how he explains how they rushed to judgment, and it wasn't a good thing. Verse 37: "Paul told the officers, 'Look, they had us beaten in public without a fair trial, and we are Roman citizens. Do you think we're going to quietly walk away after they threw us into prison and violated all of our rights? Absolutely not. You go back and tell the magistrates that they need to come down here themselves and escort us out.'" So he's going right to the top, and he's saying they made a spectacle of us, and now they need to come down here and answer to the fact that we were beaten, we were thrown into jail, we were mistreated, and this was all done to Paul and Silas, who were Roman citizens. When the officers went back and reported what Paul and Silas had told them, the magistrates were frightened, especially upon hearing that they had beaten two Roman citizens without due process. So they went to the prison and apologized to Paul and Silas, begging them repeatedly, saying, "Please leave our city." Again, adversity. You would think, after all these supernatural things have happened, that they would say, "Please stay in our city and preach the gospel." That would be how this movie plays out in our mind. But again, we live in a world that has resistance to what we believe. And our job isn't necessarily to focus on the natural outcome as much as it is to focus on our connection with the Father and to do what the Father says to do. And I understand, I know, I'm with you. I want that natural outcome to be good. I want there to be abundant provision for everything I need in this life. But sometimes, in order to get to that provision, there's a work that He's doing inside of me. And that is more important to the Lord than my natural comfort or my natural uh, just everything going right. And so it's important for us to understand that, because otherwise we get offended by the Lord and then we stop following him and we stop believing in him because we don't think he's coming through for us. And that isn't the point. The point is the eternal living relationship we have with the Father that we choose to believe in every day. Verse 40. So Paul and Silas left the prison and went back to Lydia's house, where they met with the believers and comforted and encouraged them before departing. So their focus was on encouraging the believers, and going back and I'm sure telling Lydia and the family, hey, we're good. You probably heard all these things that happened to us, but God protected us even while in difficult circumstances, and we were able to be released and probably just encourage them with faith, believing that God was with them, even in those dire, difficult circumstances. So hopefully that's encouraging to you. I know we want everything to go good. I am with you. I want that too. But even in my own life lately, there's been things that what's that expression? Things that make you go, hmm. Well, I've had a lot of those. But all it's doing is strengthening my resolve to trust him, even though at times it is a challenge because I really want God to come through in a way that I want him to come through. But his ways are not our ways. And my job is to know the heart of God and to believe him and to grow in my relationship with him so that that becomes the bedrock, the foundation of the kingdom growing inside of me. So have a great rest of your week. Be encouraged if you go through difficulties. Uh, God's doing a work in you, and look for, that's a good opportunity for you to ask the Lord, what are you doing? What are you doing through this situation? Or what do you want me to know in this situation so that I can agree with you? And hopefully that speeds up the process of breakthrough. All right, we'll talk to you again next week for Acts chapter 17.
Be lifted high, be lifted high. For your glory.